Welcome to my channel, Bookish English 2. Have you ever dreamed of going to a big city alone to follow your dream, but felt scared because of your English? That's exactly how this story begins. A journey from fear to fluency, from silence to confidence. Watch till the end, and tell me in the comments, have you ever felt this afraid to speak English in a new place? Chapter 1. The Flight That Changed My Life. I still remember the moment I sat on the plane. My heart was beating fast. I looked out of the window and everything felt like a dream. I was leaving my home in Spain. I was going to New York. I didn't know what would happen next. I didn't know if my English was good enough, but I knew one thing. I had to try. I had to do this for myself. The flight was long. I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking, what if people don't understand me? What if I say something wrong? What if I get lost? My brain was full of fear, but deep inside I also felt something else. Hope, excitement, a new beginning. I looked at my small bag. Inside, I had a notebook, a pen, a few clothes, and a big dream. I wanted to speak English. I wanted to live it. I wanted to become someone new. When the plane landed in New York, I felt a wave of emotions. The airport was loud. People were talking fast. Everything was in English, signs, announcements, instructions. My hands were shaking. I followed the crowd. I passed immigration. They asked me questions. Why are you here? How long will you stay? I answered slowly, carefully. I made mistakes, but they smiled and said, "Welcome." That one word made me breathe again. I walked outside. Cold air hit my face. The city was alive. Cars were honking. People were everywhere. Big buildings stood tall like giants. I had never seen a city like this before. It felt like I was inside a movie. But this was real. This was now my life. I got into a taxi. The driver asked, "Where to?" I opened my phone and showed him the address of my new apartment. He nodded and drove. I looked out of the window. The streets moved fast. The lights were bright. Everything was new. My chest felt heavy and light at the same time. I was scared, but also proud. I had done something brave. At one red light, I looked at my reflection in the window. I whispered to myself, "Don't give up. No matter what, keep going." That small sentence gave me power. I didn't need perfect English. I needed a strong heart. The taxi stopped in front of an old building. I paid the driver and stepped out. I looked up. My new home. I took a deep breath and walked in. Inside, everything was quiet. I climbed the stairs and found my door. My hands were cold. I knocked. A girl opened the door. She had a warm smile. "Hi," she said. "You must be Ariel." I smiled and said, "Yes." Her name was Anna. She was from Brazil. She spoke slowly, like me. Her English was not perfect, but I felt safe with her. I was not alone. Anna showed me the apartment. It was small but clean. One room, 2 beds, a small kitchen, a window that showed the street below. I sat on the bed and looked around. My new life had started. That night I couldn't sleep again. I looked at the ceiling. I thought about home, my family, my friends, my old life. But I also thought about tomorrow, my new school, my English classes, my dream. I felt afraid, but I also felt ready. I opened my notebook and wrote one sentence. This is the first page of my new story. Chapter 2. My first steps in the big city. The next morning, I woke up early. I looked out of the window. The sky was gray and the city was already awake. I could hear cars, people, horns, voices. Everything was moving fast. I sat on my bed and took a deep breath. This was not Spain. This was New York. And this was real. Anna was already in the kitchen. She was making coffee. She smiled and said, "Good morning." I smiled back and said, "Good morning." We both spoke slowly. Our English was not strong, but we understood each other. That was enough. That was beautiful. We sat together and talked. She said she also came to New York to learn English. She wanted to work in marketing. I told her I wanted to become a writer. We laughed when we made small mistakes. It felt good to laugh. It made me feel safe. After breakfast, I decided to explore the city. I put on my jacket and shoes. I took my phone, some money, and my courage. I told Anna, I go out. Just walk. See the city. She nodded and said, "Be careful. Take pictures." I smiled and left the apartment. As I walked outside, everything felt big. The buildings, the streets, the people, all so big. I looked around. So many different faces, so many languages, but mostly English. Everyone was in a hurry. Everyone looked like they had a purpose. I felt small. I felt slow. But I kept walking. I saw shops and restaurants. I saw yellow taxis and food trucks. I passed by a man selling hot dogs. I stopped and tried to speak. "One hot dog, please." My voice was soft. He looked at me and smiled. "With mustard?" he asked. I paused. "Yes, mustard." He gave me the hot dog. I paid and said, "Thank you." He said, "Have a good day." That was my first conversation in New York. It was short, but I felt proud. I kept walking. I saw a bookstore. I went inside. The smell of books made me feel at home. I looked at the titles, all in English. I picked up a small book. The words were hard, but I tried to read. I understood a few lines. That was enough. That was progress. Later, I took the subway. I wanted to learn how to use it. I followed the signs. I felt nervous. There were so many directions, so many colors. I asked a woman, "Excuse me, this train go downtown?" She smiled and said, "Yes, next stop is downtown." I said, "Thank you." I felt like a child learning to walk, but I was walking. I was learning. When I came out of the subway, I was near a small park. I sat on a bench and looked around. Children were playing. People were walking dogs. Some were sitting and reading. Some were talking on the phone. I watched them and listened. I listened to the way they spoke English. Fast, natural. But I could catch small words. Hello, coffee, work, tomorrow. Little by little, the sounds became familiar. I opened my phone and wrote a message to Anna. "City is big. I feel lost, but also happy." She replied, "Me too. We learn step by step." That evening I came back home. I was tired but smiling. Anna asked, "How was your walk?" I said, "Many things. Subway, hot dog, park, books." I spoke English. She clapped her hands. "Good job." We made dinner together. Simple food, rice and eggs. We spoke in English, slowly, carefully. Pass salt. Where is spoon? Tastes good. We laughed again. It was not perfect, but it was beautiful. That night, before sleeping, I stood at the window. I looked at the lights of the city. I remembered the airport, the plane, my fear. And now this day, my first real day in the city. I whispered to myself, I live here now. I can do this. I smiled because I believed it. Chapter 3. The first day of school. The sun came through the window. It touched my face and woke me up. My heart felt heavy and light at the same time. Today was my first day at English school. I stood in front of the mirror and looked at myself. I whispered, "You will be okay." I packed my small bag. I put in a notebook, a pen, and some water. I wore clean clothes and tied my shoelaces slowly. Anna smiled and said, "Good luck today." I said, "Thanks, I'm a little nervous." She nodded. "Me too, but we will learn." The school was not far. I decided to walk. I followed the map on my phone. As I walked, I looked at the world around me. Shops were opening. Children were going to school. A man on the corner was playing the guitar. His music felt soft, like morning air. I crossed streets and passed coffee shops. The smell of fresh bread made me feel calm. When I reached the school building, I stopped for a second. I looked at the sign, New York Language Center. I touched the door handle and stepped inside. The hall was full of people, different faces, different languages. I heard laughter. I heard accents. I felt like a small part of something big. At the front desk, a kind woman asked my name. "Ariel," I said. She smiled and gave me a paper. "You are in room 3B with Ms. Parker." I thanked her and followed the signs. My feet moved slowly, but my heart moved fast. When I entered the classroom, a few students were already sitting. They looked as nervous as I felt. One girl was from Japan. Another boy was from Egypt. I sat in an empty chair and gave them a small smile. They smiled back. Then Miss Parker came in. She was wearing a blue dress and glasses. Her voice was clear and warm. She said, "Good morning, everyone." We all answered, "Good morning." She wrote her name on the board and said, "I'm your teacher. Welcome to your new English journey." She didn't speak fast. She used simple words. She made us feel safe. She said, "Here, we learn by doing. We speak, we listen, we read, we write, every day." Then she said something important. "Don't be afraid. Mistakes are not bad. They are steps to success." She asked us to introduce ourselves. One by one, we stood and said our name, our country, and one thing we like. When it was my turn, I stood up slowly. My voice was soft. I said, "Hello, my name is Ariel. I'm from Spain. I like books." Everyone clapped. I felt my face turn red. but my chest felt proud. We played a small name game. We had to say our names and remember one thing about another student. It was funny. Some of us forgot names, some said the wrong country. But we all laughed. We were learning, not just English, but also how to relax. Ms. Parker gave us a small reading passage. It was about a girl who moves to a new city. As I read it, I felt like it was my story. Moving, changing, hoping. After we read, she asked questions. I answered one. Slowly, but I did it. She smiled and said, "Well done, Ariel." That small moment felt big inside me. Later, we did a speaking task in pairs. I sat with the girl from Japan. Her name was Aiko. We talked about our hometowns. I told her about the sea, the sun, and Spanish food. She told me about cherry blossoms and snow. Her voice was gentle, and her English was simple like mine. We understood each other. Not every word, but every feeling. When class ended, I stayed for a second. I looked around. The chairs, the whiteboard, the posters with words like "practice makes progress" and "never stop learning." I wanted to remember this room forever. This was not just a school. It was a place where fear became hope. Outside, the city was still moving fast, but I walked slower now. Something inside me had changed. I had spoken, I had listened, I had learned. And tomorrow, I would do it again. A little better. That night, I told Anna about my day. I told her about Ms. Parker, the classmates, the reading story. She shared her day too. We were walking two different paths, but in the same direction. Before sleeping, I opened my notebook. I wrote, "Today I spoke English." Not perfectly, but I spoke, and that is enough. Chapter 4. The Language of the Streets. The next morning, I woke up early again. The city outside was already alive. I could hear footsteps, doors closing, cars starting. New York never sleeps, and I was beginning to understand why. I looked at my phone. No class today. It was a holiday. I had the whole day to explore. I put on my jacket and shoes, picked up a small map, and stepped out. The air was cool and full of smells. Coffee, smoke, bread, something sweet. The street was full of movement. Everyone had somewhere to go. I didn't. I just wanted to walk and listen. I turned a corner and found a small bakery. I decided to try. I pushed the door and walked in. A woman behind the counter smiled and said, "Hi, what can I get you?" My mind went blank. I looked at the glass shelf. I pointed and said, "One, this please." She laughed kindly. "One croissant?" I nodded. "Yes, croissant." She asked, "Anything to drink?" I thought for a second. "Coffee, small. Milk." She said, "One small coffee with milk, coming up." I smiled. She understood me. That small moment made my morning. I sat by the window and watched people outside. Some were walking fast, talking into phones. Some had headphones. Some pushed strollers. All of them were using English. I listened carefully. Just a few words here and there. "Morning! You got it? No worries. Let's go." These short phrases were like pieces of a puzzle. I started to collect them in my mind. After breakfast, I decided to try the subway again, this time without using my phone. I walked to the station and looked at the map. It looked like a big spider web. I found my stop and followed the signs. I saw a woman with a baby asking a man for directions. They were using simple English. "Take this train. Next stop. Upstairs." I understood. I smiled. I was learning, not just from teachers, but from people. On the train, I heard music playing in someone's earphones, a song in English. I tried to catch the words, something about love, about dreams, about starting again. The rhythm helped me understand. English with music felt softer, easier. I got off at a new neighborhood. I didn't know the name, but I liked the colors. Graffiti on the walls, small cafes, a library. I walked inside the library and saw children listening to a story. A woman was reading aloud. Her voice was slow, full of feeling. I stood at the back and listened. I understood more than I expected. The story was simple. A boy finds a dog. He helps it. He keeps it. He finds a friend. The children laughed. I smiled too. Stories had power. They used simple words, but they touched the heart. Later, I walked into a small store. I wanted to buy toothpaste. I asked a man, "Where is toothpaste?" He looked confused for a second, then smiled. "Aisle 4, near the shampoo." I found it and said, "Thank you." I was doing it, little by little, using English in real places. At lunchtime, I stopped at a small food truck. There was a short menu. I practiced in my head. Can I have... When it was my turn, I said, "Can I have a chicken sandwich and water, please?" The man nodded. "Sure, buddy." I smiled. That buddy felt warm. I sat on a bench nearby and ate. I wrote a few sentences in my notebook. Today I used English in a bakery, subway, library, and store. I didn't use perfect words, but people understood. That's what matters. In the afternoon, I walked through a busy street market. People were shouting prices. $2, half off, fresh apples. I didn't buy anything, but I listened. Every voice, every sign, every ad. It was like a classroom without walls. I didn't need a desk. The streets were my teacher now. As the sun started to go down, I headed home. My feet were tired, but my heart was awake. Today I didn't just speak English. I lived it. The fear was still there, small, hiding in the corner. But something else was growing bigger. Trust in myself, in my voice, in my journey. That night, Anna asked, "What did you do today?" I said, "I spoke to strangers. I bought coffee. I asked questions. I listened." She clapped and said, "You're getting stronger." I said, "The streets are hard, but they teach." Before sleeping, I looked at my notebook again. I added one more line. The real classroom is everywhere, if I keep my ears open and my heart brave. Chapter 5. The Power of Practice and Pasta. That evening, after my walk through the city, I came home feeling tired. But it was a good kind of tired. The kind that comes after learning something new. Anna was already in the kitchen, holding a bag of groceries. "Let's cook something," she said. "Something easy." I nodded. Pasta? She smiled. Perfect. We laid the ingredients on the table. Pasta, tomatoes, garlic, salt, cheese. Simple. But to us, it felt like we were planning a big dinner party. Not because the food was special, but because we decided to cook only in English. No Spanish, no Portuguese. Only English, no matter how slow or funny it sounded. I said, "Can you give me the, red thing?" Anna laughed. Tomato? Yes, I said. Tomato. She handed it to me. Your turn. Ask me something. She pointed to the pan. Can you, turn on the fire? I looked at the stove. Yes. I turn on the heat. We both laughed. It felt like a small game, but every sentence, every word, was a step forward. As we cooked, we practiced vocabulary. Boil, chop, stir, taste. These words were not in our school book, but they were real. They were alive. And we remembered them better because we were using them. While the sauce was cooking, I said, "Smells good." Anna replied, "Better than school lunch." I added, "It smells like home." We paused for a moment. That sentence felt warm. It made the small kitchen feel full of heart. We set the table and served the pasta. I poured water into 2 glasses. To learning, I said, holding up mine. To speaking, Anna answered. We clinked our glasses like grown-ups and took a bite. The pasta was soft, the sauce sweet, not perfect, but made with love and words. During dinner, we asked each other questions in English. What's your favorite food? Where do you want to travel? What job do you want? Sometimes we had to stop and think. Sometimes we said the wrong word, but we never laughed at each other. We laughed with each other. That made all the difference. After eating, we cleaned the dishes, still using English. Pass the soap. Rinse the plate. This spoon is slippery. Even these small actions became part of our learning. We were not just students anymore. We were speakers. We were doing it. Later, we sat by the window and looked at the city lights, the cars, the buildings, the sounds. I said, "I feel good today." Anna nodded. Me too, not just because of the food, but because we spoke English. A lot. I added, and we didn't care if it was perfect. She looked at me and said something I won't forget. Practice is not just in school. It's in the kitchen, in the park, in the little things. That's how we grow. I smiled. Yes, we speak it. We live it. Before going to sleep, I wrote in my notebook again. We cooked pasta, but really we were cooking confidence, 1 sentence at a time. Then I wrote another line. Don't wait for the classroom. Every moment is practice, if your heart is open and your mouth is brave. That night I slept well, not because I was tired, but because I knew. My English was growing, quietly, gently, through pasta, through laughter, through practice. Chapter 6. When Listening Feels Impossible. The next morning at school, Ms. Parker walked in holding a small speaker. Today, she said. We will practice listening. I felt something turn in my stomach. Listening was the hardest part for me. Speaking was scary, but at least I could choose my words. Listening felt like a storm of fast sounds I couldn't catch. She placed the speaker on the desk and pressed play. A voice started. It was an English conversation between two people. I tried to follow, but after just a few seconds, I was lost. The words blended together. I understood maybe 5 words out of 50. Hello? Coffee? Busy. That's all. Ms. Parker stopped the audio and asked, "What did you hear?" A few students raised their hands. Maria said, "They talk about a meeting." Ahmed said, "Something about lunch?" I looked down at my notebook. It was empty. I felt slow. My heart sank. Ms. Parker smiled gently. "Let's listen again. And this time, write down 1 or 2 words. Not everything, just what you can." She played the audio again. I closed my eyes and focused. This time, I heard one sentence. "Let's meet at the cafe at noon." It was still difficult. But now I had something. She played it a 3rd time, and a 4th. Each time, more words came to life. Little by little, the meaning became clearer. It was like trying to see underwater. At first, just shapes. Then slowly, details. A cup, a table, a voice. After the 5th time, I wrote a short sentence. They are friends. They meet at a cafe. It was not perfect, but it was mine, my own understanding, and it felt good. Ms. Parker turned to the class and said, "Listening takes time. You will not understand everything at first, but you will hear more if you don't give up." That sentence stayed in my head all day. After the listening practice, she gave us a short worksheet. We had to match the sentences to the pictures. One picture showed a man talking on the phone. One showed a girl ordering coffee. One showed 2 friends laughing. I smiled. These were the people I had just met through sound. In the afternoon, I decided to keep practicing. I went to a coffee shop near school. I didn't bring a book. I didn't bring music. I just sat and listened. 2 people behind me were talking about their weekend. I didn't understand everything, but I caught parts. Movie night. Too much rain. Let's go again next Friday. I didn't write anything down. I just let the English flow into my ears. At one point, I closed my eyes and just listened. I didn't worry about mistakes. I didn't try to translate. I just listened like a child listens to music. I didn't need to understand every word. I only needed to stay open. Later that evening, Anna and I watched a short video on her laptop, a cooking show in English. We turned on subtitles. She said, "Let's try something new." We watch first with subtitles, then again without. I nodded. We watched a 5-minute clip. The host spoke fast, but I followed the subtitles. Then we watched again without them. It was hard, but some words felt familiar now. The sounds didn't scare me as much anymore. After that, we paused and repeated one sentence out loud. First, chop the onion into small pieces. I said it slowly. Then again. Anna did the same. It became fun. It became practice. And it didn't feel like school. It felt like progress. Before sleeping, I wrote in my notebook, "Today I didn't understand everything, but I understood more than yesterday, and tomorrow I will understand more than today." Then I added a line just for myself. When listening feels impossible, listen anyway. Words grow inside you, even when you don't notice. Chapter 7. A Weekend of Discovery. Saturday morning came with sunlight through the window. The city felt softer than usual. No alarms, no rush, just a quiet morning and a new weekend. Anna knocked on my door and said, "Let's go somewhere." I smiled. "Where?" She shrugged. "Anywhere. We explore." We had no big plan, just a subway map, our phones, and our curiosity. We packed a water bottle, snacks, and our courage to speak English with strangers if needed. The streets were already busy, but the energy was different. Families, tourists, children. We felt like part of something bigger. Our first stop was Times Square. I had seen it in movies, but now I was there, standing in the middle of it. Big screens flashed with colors and lights. Crowds moved like waves around us. People were taking photos, laughing, shouting, performing. Everything was in English: signs, music, advertisements. I read them slowly. SALE, Broadway. Next show at 7 p.m. Each word felt like a lesson. Anna said, "So bright." I replied, "Too many lights for morning." We both laughed. Our English was simple, but we were using it without fear. That felt like a small victory. Next, we found a street vendor selling keychains. I wanted to buy one for my sister. I asked, "How much is this?" The man replied, 3 for 10. I paused. "Can I get only one?" He smiled. "Sure, $4. I gave him the money and said, "Thank you." It was a short conversation, but it made me feel proud. I didn't need perfect grammar to connect with someone. After Times Square, we walked to Central Park. Trees, green grass, a small lake, and people everywhere. It felt like a different world inside the city. We sat on a bench and watched people passing by. Some were jogging, some were painting, some were reading books. I wanted to talk to one man who was sketching the lake. I asked, "You draw this every day?" He looked up and said, "Almost. It helps me relax." I nodded. "It's beautiful." That was it. A real conversation. Natural. Unexpected. And it stayed with me. Later, we walked through the park until we saw a big building nearby, the Museum of Modern Art. Anna said, "Let's go in." I agreed. We bought tickets and entered. Inside, everything was quiet, like the art wanted us to listen. We walked through the halls and looked at paintings. There was one by Van Gogh. It had stars swirling in the sky. I read the small sign next to it. Starry Night. The text was in English. I read slowly. It talked about emotions and color and dreams. I didn't understand every word, but I felt something deep in my heart. I looked at Anna and said, "This painting speaks without words." She nodded. Art is another language. We visited many rooms. Some had strange art. Some had beautiful photos. Some had sculptures. Each time we tried to read the descriptions in English. Some words were new. Abstract, exhibit, installation. We wrote them down to learn later. But in that moment, we used our eyes, our minds, and our hearts to learn too. When we left the museum, it was almost evening. The city lights were starting to glow. Anna said, "I feel tired, but happy." I agreed. Today was full of walking, full of English, full of new things. We both smiled. On the subway ride back home, we didn't say much. We just sat and thought about our day. I looked at the pictures on my phone. Times Square, the lake, the painting, the keychain. These were not just memories, they were reminders. I was learning English in real life, with real people, in real places, and it was working. That night, we made sandwiches and talked quietly about the museum. Anna said, "I want to go again." I said, "Yes. Maybe next time we speak to the guide." She laughed. "Let's practice more first." Before going to bed, I opened my notebook and wrote, "Today I listened with my eyes. I spoke with confidence. I read with patience. I used English in the world, and the world spoke back." Then I added, "Learning happens when you move, when you go outside, when you see, when you try." Today was more than a lesson. It was a discovery. Chapter 8. My first English journal. The next day, I woke up late. The weekend had filled me with so many new moments that my body needed rest. I stayed in bed for a few minutes, thinking about everything. Times Square, the park, the painting, the words I tried to understand. My head was full of memories, and I didn't want to forget them. I sat at the table, made tea, and looked around the apartment. Anna was still asleep. The city outside was quiet, just for a little while. I felt something inside me, a small voice that said, "Write it down." So I opened my notebook and wrote on the top of the page, "My first English journal." At first, I didn't know how to begin. I looked at the blank page. My English was not strong. I didn't have many words, but I remembered what Ms. Parker said. Use what you know, not what you don't. So I started with one line. Yesterday, I go to Times Square. Then I looked at it. I smiled. I knew go was wrong. It should be went. I opened my phone and searched past tense of go. I fixed the sentence. Yesterday I went to Times Square. That small correction made me feel strong. I could fix things. I could learn. I wrote more. The lights were big. The people were many. I buy a keychain. I eat a sandwich. I talk to a man who draw in the park. Then I paused. I checked. Buy, eat, draw, past tense. Slowly, I changed them. I bought a keychain. I ate a sandwich. I talked to a man who was drawing in the park. It took time, but I liked it. I wasn't just writing. I was learning. And not from a teacher. From myself. When Anna woke up, she saw me at the table. "What are you doing?" she asked. "Writing. In English," I said. She smiled and sat beside me. "Can I read?" I handed her the notebook. She read it slowly and nodded. "Very good." Then she added, "It's not perfect, but it's real." I closed the notebook and said, "That's enough for today." But inside, I knew something had started. This little book would be my friend, my mirror, my map. Every day I would write, even just a little. In class that week, Ms. Parker said something that stayed with me. She said, "If you want to remember a word, use it. Write it. Speak it. Make it part of your story." That's when I knew my journal wasn't just a notebook. It was my private classroom, a place to make mistakes, a place to grow. That evening, I wrote again. Today, I learned 5 new words: busy, crowd, museum, relax, window. Then I wrote 1 sentence for each. The street is busy. I see a big crowd in the square. The museum is quiet. I relax in the park. I sit near the window and read. Simple, but powerful. I didn't just read the words. I made them mine. Anna started a journal too. We made it a habit. Every night after dinner, we would sit at the table with tea and write. Then we would read 1 sentence to each other. Sometimes we corrected each other. Sometimes we just smiled. No pressure, just practice. One night Anna wrote, "Today I am tired, but I feel proud." I looked at her and said, "That's beautiful." She replied, "It's the truth." And I realized something. English wasn't just about grammar. It was about truth, saying what you feel, what you think, what you see. Before bed, I wrote a short letter in my journal. Dear English, you are not easy, but you are kind. You give me new ways to speak. You show me how strong I can be. I will not stop, even when I feel slow. Your friend, Ariel. Then I closed the notebook and felt something deep inside. Peace, growth, a quiet kind of pride. And I whispered to myself, I may not speak like a native, but I write like a learner who loves to learn. Chapter 9. Looking for a job. Looking for courage. One morning, Anna and I were sitting at the breakfast table. We had just finished our eggs and toast when she looked at me and said, I want to find a job. I didn't answer right away. I just looked at my hands. A job. In English. Talking to real people. Making real mistakes. The idea scared me, but also, it made me feel alive. I nodded slowly and said, Yes, me too. First. Tea was time. We couldn't stay safe in the classroom forever. We had to step outside and try something new, even if it was hard, even if we failed. That afternoon, we opened our laptops and searched for part-time jobs. We typed slowly. Jobs in cafe. Jobs for students. Jobs no experience. Each search gave us new words. Barista. Cashier. Shift. Resume. We didn't understand everything, but we clicked and read. Line by line, word by word. We helped each other. What is flexible hours? I asked. Anna looked it up. It means your work time can change. I nodded. Good word. We made a list of jobs and places. Then we started writing our first resumes in English. It felt strange, writing about ourselves in a language we were still learning. But we tried. Name, contact, skills. I can speak English. That line felt both true and false, but we left it there. The next day we printed our resumes and went outside. The city looked different now. It was not just a place to explore, it was a place to ask, to try, to be seen. We walked into small cafes, bakeries, and bookstores. We asked the same question again and again. Hello, are you hiring? Some people said, no, sorry. Others took our paper with a smile. Some just nodded and said, we'll call you. After 10 tries, our feet were sore. After 15, our voices were tired. But we kept going, because every no was part of the journey. At one small cafe, a woman behind the counter looked at me and said, come back tomorrow for an interview. I blinked. Interview? She smiled. Yes, bring yourself. That's enough. I thanked her again and again. My heart was beating fast. When we walked out of the cafe, I turned to Anna. She had the biggest smile on her face. We did it, she said. I said, not yet. But maybe soon. That evening, we practiced interview questions in English. We sat across from each other at the table and took turns asking and answering. Tell me about yourself. Why do you want this job? What are your strengths? We used the words we knew. We made mistakes, but we corrected them together. Anna said, you are kind and calm, that's a strength. I said, you are brave. You speak even when you're unsure. We were not just preparing for the job. We were learning about ourselves. The night before the interview, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed and stared at the ceiling. My thoughts were loud. What if I forget the words? What if I don't understand the questions? What if they laugh? Then I remembered something Ms. Parker once said in class. Your job is not to be perfect. Your job is to be ready. I repeated that in my mind again and again, like a soft song, and slowly I closed my eyes and slept. The next morning I wore my cleanest shirt and fixed my hair. Anna helped me practice one last time. Just speak slowly, she said. Smile, be you. I nodded and said, I'll try. Then I left the apartment, walked to the cafe, and stepped through the door. I told the manager my name. She took me to a table and sat across from me. She had kind eyes. She asked me questions. I answered in short, simple sentences. I came to New York to learn English. I want to work here to practice speaking. I am a good listener and I work hard. She smiled and said, That's great. Thank you for coming. I stood up, shook her hand, and said, Thank you for the chance. When I walked out, the sun was shining, and my hands were shaking. I came home and told Anna everything. She listened and nodded. You did your best, she said. Now, we wait. That night we cooked together and I felt something strange in my chest. Not fear, not worry, just courage. A soft kind. The kind that grows quietly when you do something hard and don't run away. Before sleeping, I opened my journal and wrote, Today, I ask the world to see me, not as perfect, just as someone who is trying. That is enough. Then I added, Courage is not loud. It is the small voice that says, I will try again tomorrow. Chapter 10. My first job interview. The next morning started with silence. No alarm, no birds, just the soft sound of my own breath. I woke up before the sun. I couldn't sleep anymore. Today was the day, the interview. My first real interview. And in English. My heart was already racing, and I hadn't even left my bed. I sat up and looked at the notebook on my table. It was open to a page where I had written practice questions. I read one. Why do you want this job? I said it out loud, softly. I want this job because I want to speak more English, and I like helping people. My voice was shaky, but it was my voice. It was real. Anna woke up soon after. She saw me sitting quietly and gave me a thumbs up. You got this, she said. I smiled, but deep inside, I wasn't sure. I went to the bathroom and looked at myself in the mirror. I fixed my shirt and combed my hair. Then I whispered, Today is not about being perfect. It's about being brave. That gave me the strength to keep moving. We had breakfast together, just toast and tea. I couldn't eat much. I felt like every bite was too big. Anna was calm. She had her own interview, too, at another place, but she looked strong. I asked her, Aren't you scared? She said, Yes, but I'm doing it anyway. That one sentence stayed in my heart all day. At 10:30, I left the apartment. The sky was cloudy. I walked slowly. Every step felt like a question. Will they understand me? Will I freeze? Will I forget everything I practiced? I held my notebook tight in my bag. I didn't plan to open it, but somehow it felt like a safety blanket. Something to hold, something familiar. I reached the cafe 10 minutes early. I stood outside for a moment. I watched people go in and out. Some laughed, some ordered drinks. The smell of coffee came through the door, warm, strong. I took a deep breath and stepped inside. The manager, Lucy, was behind the counter. She saw me and smiled. Hi, Ariel, right? I nodded and said, Yes. Thank you for this opportunity. She came out and invited me to sit. The cafe was busy but not too loud. She opened a folder and began to ask questions. Her voice was clear and friendly, not fast, not slow, just enough for me to understand. Tell me about yourself, she said. I sat up straight. I'm Ariel. I'm from Spain. I came to New York to learn English. I want to work here, to practice speaking, and learn more. She nodded and smiled. Great. Have you worked in a cafe before? I shook my head. Number. But I can learn fast. I work hard. I like helping people. She wrote something down and asked, What are your strengths? I paused. I looked at the ceiling. Then I said, I stay calm. I listen. I try again if I make mistake. She looked pleased. That's important. The questions continued. I answered all of them, slowly, carefully. My grammar was not perfect. I mixed up some words, but I didn't panic. I smiled. I kept going, and Lucy kept listening. At the end, she looked at me and said, You know what I like about you, Ariel? I blinked. What? She said, You're honest. And you're trying. That's what matters here. Then she added, We'd like to give you a trial shift, just to see how things go. My heart jumped. I almost didn't believe it. I asked, Really? She nodded. Yes. Can you come next Monday, 9 a.m.? I said, yes, I will be here. When I walked out of the cafe, the clouds had moved. The sun was breaking through. I looked at the sky and felt something rise inside me. Not just happiness, not just pride, something more. I had just done something that scared me for weeks, and I did it in English. I walked home slowly, smiling. When I opened the door, Anna was sitting on the couch. She looked up. Well? I said nothing at first. I just raised my hand in the air like a champion. Trial shift, I said. She ran over and hugged me. You did it, I asked. What about you? She smiled. Me too. Interview tomorrow. That night, we made dinner and talked about everything. Not just the words we said, but the feelings we had. The shaking hands, the deep breaths, the small victories. We were not just learning English anymore. We were becoming people who could live in English, work in English, believe in ourselves in English. Before bed, I opened my notebook and wrote, "Today, I spoke English in my fear," and it listened, and it said yes. Then I added, "Courage is speaking slowly in front of someone who could say no, and smiling anyway." Chapter 11. From Learner to Worker. Monday morning came quickly. I woke up before the alarm. My body was nervous, but my mind was ready. It was the day of my first shift at the cafe. The day I would stop being just a student and start being a worker. I stood in front of the mirror and put on my cleanest shirt again. I tried to fix my hair and practice a smile. "You can do this," I whispered. "Just do your best. Don't try to be perfect. Just be you." Anna gave me a quick thumbs up before I left. She was getting ready for her own interview, and her support felt like a warm jacket. The walk to the cafe felt longer than usual. I counted my steps. I went over useful phrases in my head. Would you like anything else? Do you want milk or sugar? Your total is $5. My brain was full. My hands were cold, but my heart was open. I reached the cafe and walked in. Lucy, the manager, smiled and waved me to the back. "Ready for your first day?" she asked. "Yes," I said, even though I was shaking inside. She showed me where to keep my bag, where the coffee beans were, how to clean the counter, and how to greet the customers. The list was long, but I listened with full attention. I didn't want to miss anything. Another worker named Jamie helped me too. He spoke fast, but he was kind. "Don't worry," he said. "We all make mistakes. Just smile and stay calm." That sentence helped more than he knew. Then the customers started to come. At first, I stood at the back, just watching. Then Lucy said, "Ariel, take the next order." My feet froze for a second, but I nodded and stepped forward. A woman came to the counter and said, "Hi, can I get a medium latte with almond milk?" My brain jumped. Medium, latte, almond milk. I smiled and repeated, "One medium latte with almond milk?" She smiled. "Yes." I pressed the buttons on the machine slowly. I asked Jamie for help. I added the milk. I handed her the cup. "Here is your coffee. Have a nice day." She said, "Thank you." and walked away. I had done it. One customer, one real order, one step forward. As the morning passed, I took more orders. Some people spoke clearly, others mumbled. Some were in a hurry, some were patient. I made small mistakes. I forgot a sugar packet. I gave the wrong size cup once. But nobody was angry. I apologized. They smiled. I fixed it. I learned. I felt myself growing, not like a student, but like someone who belonged. During the lunch break, I sat with Jamie outside. He asked, "How's your first day?" I said, "Hard, but good." He nodded. "That's how it starts." We laughed, and I felt relaxed for the first time that day. After the break, I helped clean tables. I greeted more customers. I started remembering words without thinking. For here or to go? We have oat milk and soy milk. That'll be $7.50. Each sentence made me feel stronger. At the end of my shift, Lucy called me to the back. "Good job today," she said. "You stayed calm. You listened. That's more important than speed." I thanked her. She looked at the schedule. "Can you come again Thursday?" My heart jumped. "Yes," I said quickly. "I can come." I walked home that evening with tired legs and a happy heart. My shirt had a small coffee stain and my shoes were sore, but none of that mattered. I had done something new, something big. I had worked in English. When I opened the door, Anna was there with a big smile. "Tell me everything," she said. I sat down and told her every detail, the orders, the mistakes, the kind customers, the manager's smile. She listened and clapped her hands. Then she said, "I start tomorrow." I gave her a high five and said, "You will do great." That night, I didn't write much in my journal. I was too tired. But I opened the page and wrote one big sentence. Today, I worked in English. Not perfectly, but honestly. And that is enough. Then I added one more line. Real learning begins when you stop being only a learner and start becoming a doer. Chapter 12. New friends, new confidence. The next few days passed quickly. I went to work again, and this time I felt a little different. I was still nervous, but not frozen. My hands still shook sometimes, but my voice did not. Each time I greeted a customer, I felt more comfortable. "Good morning. What can I get for you?" became easier. "Would you like cream or sugar?" Started to sound natural. The words didn't feel like pieces anymore. They started to feel like part of me. I still made small mistakes. I still asked Jamie for help when I forgot how to say something. But I wasn't afraid like before. I was trying, and trying gave me power. At school, Ms. Parker noticed something. During our group activities, I spoke more. I asked classmates questions. I explained ideas in my own words. She looked at me once and said, "Ariel, your confidence is growing." That small sentence felt like a trophy, not for speaking perfectly, but for showing up again and again, even when I was unsure. One afternoon after class, Maria from Mexico came to me and said, "Do you want to study together?" I smiled. "Yes, I do." We went to a small coffee shop and practiced asking each other questions in English. We corrected each other. We laughed when we both got confused about the difference between at and in. It didn't feel like studying. It felt like friendship. Soon, I started talking more at work too, not just to customers, but to the other workers. Jamie and I started sharing jokes. "You making art with the foam again?" he asked one day as I handed him a cappuccino. "It's modern art," I replied. We both laughed. A few other workers joined in. One girl, Emily, liked reading, and we talked about books. I told her I was learning English because I wanted to be a writer. She said, "That's awesome. One day I'll read your book." Her words stayed in my chest like a small light. Little by little, my fear started to melt. Not disappear, just melt, slowly. I started greeting regular customers with a smile. I remembered their orders. "One black coffee, no sugar, right?" Mr. Johnson, an old man who came every morning, nodded. "You're learning fast," he said. "New York is lucky to have you." I thanked him, and my voice was steady. Even outside school and work, I began using English more. Anna and I made it a rule: no more speaking in our native languages at home. We talked in English, even when we were tired, even when it was easier to switch. We talked about our days, our dreams, our favorite songs. Sometimes it was funny, sometimes it was deep, but it was always practice, and it was making us better. One evening, we invited Maria and Hiroshi over for dinner. We made rice, beans, salad, and tea. We played music and told stories, all in English. Everyone spoke slowly. Everyone listened patiently. We made mistakes, but nobody laughed. We helped each other. We encouraged each other. The room felt warm, not just because of the food, but because we were all trying. We were all learning. We were all growing. That night, after everyone left, I stood by the window and looked at the city lights. I remembered the boy I was when I arrived, quiet, afraid, unsure. I wasn't that same boy anymore. I was still learning. I was still growing. But I was different now. I had a voice. I had friends. I had courage. Before sleeping, I opened my journal and wrote, "Today, I used English not to pass a test, but to connect, to laugh, to live." Then I added, "Fluency is not just in the grammar. It's in the friendship. It's in the smile that comes after a sentence you thought you couldn't say." Chapter 13. A Walk Through Culture. One morning at school, Ms. Parker walked in with a big smile on her face and a small box in her hands. She stood in front of the class and said, "Today, we will do something special." Everyone sat up a little straighter. We were used to grammar and listening practice, but her eyes told us this would be something different. She opened the box and took out a small flag. "This is my country's flag," she said. "Now it's your turn." On the board, she wrote 3 words: culture, story, and share. Then she explained, "This Friday, we will have a cultural exchange day. You can bring something from your country: food, pictures, music, or a memory. And you will tell us about it in English." When I heard that, my stomach twisted a little. Speak in front of the class again? Share something personal? But then I remembered how I felt after my job interview. Nervous, yes, but also proud. Maybe this was another chance to grow. I went home that day and told Anna about the event. She was excited. "I will bring brigadeiros," she said. "They're Brazilian sweets. Everyone will love them." I smiled. "I'll bring Turon. It's a Spanish sweet, too." She nodded. "Good idea. And what will you say?" I paused. "I don't know yet. Maybe I'll talk about La Tomatina." Anna laughed. "The Tomato Festival? That's perfect." The rest of the week, I prepared little by little. I printed 2 pictures of La Tomatina, one with people throwing tomatoes, one with the crowd all covered in red. I also wrote a short speech in my journal. Then I practiced it out loud. "Hello, my name is Ariel. Today I will talk about a special festival in Spain called La Tomatina." I read it again and again. I corrected my sentences. I made them simpler. I timed myself. I even recorded my voice. Every day I felt a little more ready. On Friday, I woke up early. I put the sweets in a box and carefully folded my pictures. When I arrived at school, the classroom was already full of color and sound. There were flags on the walls, music playing softly, and tables full of food from all over the world. Hiroshi had brought sushi, Maria brought tacos, Ahmed had falafel, Anna had a small tray of her chocolate sweets, and I had Turon. Ms. Parker smiled and said, "You are all travelers today. Not by plane, but by story. Let's begin." One by one, we stood in front of the class and shared. Everyone spoke in simple English. Nobody laughed. Nobody judged. We clapped for each speaker. We listened with open hearts. When it was my turn, I stood slowly and took a deep breath. I held my pictures and walked to the front. "Hello, my name is Ariel. I am from Spain. Today I will talk about La Tomatina." As I spoke, I felt my body relax. My words were not perfect, but my voice was clear. I told them how people throw tomatoes in the streets, how it started by accident, how it became a tradition of fun and joy. I showed my pictures. I shared a memory from my childhood. Then I smiled and said, "It's messy, but it brings people together, like English does." When I finished, the class clapped. Ms. Parker said, "Beautiful. Thank you, Ariel." I sat down with my heart full. Not because I spoke well, but because I shared something true, something from my home. And they listened. After everyone finished, we had a small party. We tried each other's food. We asked questions. "What is this made of? Is this spicy? What does this song mean?" We used English for everything, not perfectly, but with joy. The classroom was louder than usual, not with noise, but with life. I looked around and saw people laughing, smiling, dancing, and I thought, this is what English is for. When I went home that day, I didn't feel tired. I felt alive. I looked at my pictures again. I tasted one more piece of Turon. Then I opened my journal and wrote, "Today, I spoke about my country, and in doing that, I felt more connected to the world." Then I added, "Language is more than rules. It is a bridge between hearts, between memories, between cultures." Chapter 14. The Day I Taught Something. The days after our cultural exchange felt different. Something had shifted inside me. I didn't just feel like a student anymore. I felt like someone with a voice. Someone who could give, not just receive. Ms. Parker must have felt it too, because one morning she made an announcement that surprised all of us. "Next week," she said, "we will start our English book circle. Every student will choose a short story in English, read it, and share something they learned. Not a test, not a big speech, just a reflection, something honest, something real." I felt my heart move. I had read a few English stories since arriving in New York, simple ones, children's books, graded readers. One in particular had stayed with me, a story about a lonely boy who planted a tree. The words were easy, but the feelings were deep. I decided I would share that. All week, I read the story again and again. I underlined words I liked. I circled sentences that touched me. I practiced telling the story in my own words. This is a story about a boy who feels small, but he does something small every day, and one day it becomes something big. I didn't worry about sounding smart. I just wanted to be understood. That was my goal now, to use English not for perfection, but for connection. The day of the book circle came. We sat in a circle with our notebooks open. Ms. Parker smiled and said, "Who would like to start?" For the first time, I raised my hand without fear. She nodded at me. "Go ahead, Ariel." I took a breath, looked at my classmates, and began. I held the small book in my hand and told them the story in my own words. I said how the boy in the story reminded me of myself when I first came to New York. Quiet, scared, unsure. I told them how the boy didn't change everything overnight. He just did one small thing every day, and slowly it changed his whole world. As I spoke, I saw people listening, really listening. Their eyes were soft. Their smiles were kind. Nobody looked bored. Nobody corrected me. I spoke slowly, clearly. I didn't try to impress. I just told the truth. When I finished, Ms. Parker said, "That was beautiful, Ariel. Thank you for teaching us that even small actions can grow into big change." My heart filled with warmth. I had never heard anyone say I taught something before. That word, teach, felt too big, too serious. But now it felt possible, because I had done it. After class, Maria came up to me and said, "I liked your story. It made me feel strong, like I don't need to be fast, just steady." Hiroshi added, "I want to read the book too. Maybe we can talk about it later." I smiled. We were helping each other now, not just in grammar or vocabulary, but in life. We were teaching each other how to grow. That evening, I met Anna at the cafe after her shift. We sat at our usual corner table, drinking warm tea. I told her everything, the story, the circle, the words Ms. Parker said. She smiled and said, "See? I told you. You're not just learning English, you're living it." Then she added something that made me quiet for a moment. "One day, you'll write your own stories, and maybe teach more people." I looked at her. "You really think so?" She nodded. I do. That night, I didn't just write in my journal. I started something new, a new notebook. On the first page, I wrote a title, Stories I Want to Tell. I didn't know what the second page would be yet, but that first page, it was full of hope. In my regular journal, I wrote, Today, I shared a story in English. And I didn't just share words, I shared meaning, and that is what makes language powerful. Then I added, Sometimes the learner becomes the guide, and you don't even notice until someone thanks you for teaching them. Chapter 15. From Fear to Fluency. My Journey So Far. It was a quiet Sunday evening in New York. The sky outside my window was a mix of gold and gray, like the city itself, bright, busy, but sometimes calm too. I sat at my desk, opened my journal, and looked at the first page I had written weeks ago. I am scared, but I want to learn, it said. I smiled. That sentence felt like a whisper from an old version of myself. I remembered my flight from Spain, my shaky English at the airport, the fear in my chest as I looked around a city I had never seen before. I remembered meeting Anna, my roommate from Brazil, who became like a sister to me. I remembered my first day of class, the kindness of Ms. Parker, and the simple welcome that helped me breathe again. I remembered the loud streets, the confusing subway, the time I got lost but still found a way to ask for help. I remembered cooking pasta and learning how to say pass the salt in English. I remembered listening to recordings in class and understanding almost nothing until I listened again and again. I remembered walking through Central Park, visiting the museum, reading English signs, and laughing with new friends. I remembered my first English journal, where I wrote about my day and my dreams. I remembered the job center, the interviews, the cafe, and the kind customers who made me feel like I belonged. I remembered standing in front of the class, holding pictures of Spain, and speaking about my culture in a language that once scared me. I remembered sharing a story that touched someone else. And I remembered the words Ms. Parker said, "Thank you for teaching us." I sat in that moment and felt something grow in my chest. Not pride, but peace. I was still not perfect. I still made mistakes, but I was no longer afraid of them. I no longer felt like I had to hide. I had spoken. I had worked. I had taught. I had lived in English. And that is fluency. Not fast words, not long sentences, but real words. Honest effort. A voice that keeps going even when it shakes. That night, I walked to the rooftop of our building. Anna joined me. We looked at the lights of the city, far and wide. "You've changed," she said. I looked at her and smiled. "So have you." She nodded. We didn't need many words. We both knew. We had come to New York to learn English, but we had learned so much more. We had learned how to begin again, how to fall and stand, how to speak, not just with our mouths, but with our hearts. I didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but I knew this. I was not afraid anymore. I was not alone, and I was not the same person who stepped on that plane. I was someone new, someone braver, someone who could say, "I speak English." And it changed my life. If this story touched your heart, please like this video and share it with someone who is learning English. Leave a comment. Have you felt scared to speak in English like Ariel? Tell me your story. I read every comment. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel so we can grow, learn, and live in English together. One brave word at a time.